So let's end off by revisiting our learning objectives. So first, you should be able to now state what is translocation. That it is the transport of manufactured food substances, right, like amino acids and sugars inside the phloem. Okay, and you should be able to tell me some things about the experiments used to study translocation, to provide evidence that it is the phloem that carries out translocation and the transport of sugars. So remember, we looked at the aphid experiments, aphid stylectomy, which was a bit gross, right? But aphid stylectomy showed us that the phloem contains amino acids and sugars, right? Because we saw that when we examined the liquid which came out of the phloem, that it was full of amino acids and sugars. So that provides evidence that the phloem helps to transport those substances. Experiment number 2, we looked at ringing. Okay, the ringing experiment. I remember we had a stem. I draw my stem. And we removed the phloem from one part of the stem. And over time, we saw that there was a bulge here above the cut. Now that suggested, it provides evidence that the phloem helps to transport sugars, right? Because the sugars are coming down from the leaves, which are here at the top part of the stem. And because we removed the phloem from this region, the sugars accumulated and caused a bulge in the stem. Now imagine if you had gotten the reverse result. Okay, we remove the phloem and then you get a bulge at the bottom. What would this suggest? Well, this would suggest that the phloem transports water, right? Because now without the phloem, water cannot go up. However, we got this result, right? This is the result that we got. So this evidence suggests that the phloem transports sugars. Now the last experiment we had was the carbon-14 isotope experiment. Right, and in that experiment we saw that when you give the leaves carbon-14, right, the carbon-14 carbon dioxide, they make carbon-14 sugars which were transported into the phloem, and we saw that only the phloem gives a radioactive signal. There was no radioactive signal from the xylem. Right, so that shows us, or it provides evidence that supports the theory that sugars are transported inside the phloem and not inside the xylem. Now I'm just going to end off now by talking about how translocation occurs. Now this is a bit extra, but I just thought that some of you might be interested. Okay, so here's the extra part of our lesson. It talks about the mechanism for translocation, or how translocation is thought to happen. But it's important to point out that this is only a hypothesis. And scientists have come up with this mass flow hypothesis to explain how sucrose, how sugars are moved through the phloem. Now, importantly, it's a hypothesis, so it's not been proven conclusively, but there is evidence that suggests it. And this is what they think happens. Now, imagine, okay, so in the phloem, sucrose is always transported from the source to a sink. Alright, so there's a source. So in this case, the source is in the leaf, right? The leaf produces glucose, and that glucose is used to produce sucrose. Alright, so the leaf will have a lot of sucrose. So the source cell, the leaf, has a lot of sucrose. Now what people think is that sucrose is loaded at the source. Okay, so what happens is I will load all my sucrose into here. From the source, it loads the sucrose into the phloem. Alright, this takes energy, probably through active transport. All the sucrose is transported into the phloem. Now what happens then is that this part of the phloem, near the source, has a lower water potential, right? Because there's a lot of sucrose there now, the water potential drops. This causes water to move in from the xylem, right? Because water moves in from the xylem from higher water potential to lower water potential by osmosis. Water moves in, because the xylem is kind of near the phloem. We'll see that next week. Water moves in and builds up pressure here. So lots of water moves in and pressure is built up. And it is that pressure that causes a flow of water together with sucrose down to the sink. Right, so water moves in from the xylem, builds up pressure, and there is mass flow, and sucrose is translocated down to the sink, which is usually in the roots. Okay, so this is the hypothesis, what people think. And maybe just let me end off by saying that, yeah, it's interesting that lots of the things that we think happen in plants, they're still hypotheses. In fact, many of the things in biology that we think happens, they're still theories, they're still hypotheses. There is evidence to support it, but it's not fully 100% clear. And so there's so much possibility, there's so many things that still need to be discovered. And that's what you guys are here for. The next generation, you're going to learn about plants and animals. You're going to go on and find out new things about them. Alright, so with that, I'm going to end off the lesson. I know some of the things about the phloem and the xylem are still a bit unclear. Hopefully it'll be clearer next week, right, when you are going to look at the xylem and the phloem in more detail in your lesson next Monday. Alright, but for now, maybe just have a read through the textbook on the transport in plants. We're going to move on to that chapter, and after that chapter, that's the end for this term. Alright, see you, and have a good rest of the week.